In the summer of 2018, Frederick, Colorado seemed like the last place where horror could unfold. It was a quiet town, the kind of place where neighbors waved, children played in open yards, and families built the kind of life that looked perfect from the outside. For Chris and Shanann Watts, that image was everything. They had two beautiful daughters, Bella and Celeste, and another child on the way, a boy they planned to name Nico. Their social media was full of love, smiles, and family trips. To anyone scrolling, the Watts were the definition of happiness. But beneath that picture-perfect life, cracks were spreading. Shanann, a driven and devoted mother, often worked from home while Chris held a steady job in the oil fields. Their marriage, however, was growing distant. Friends noticed the change, how Chris had become quieter, more detached. Shanann tried to keep their family together, but something in his eyes had shifted. On the morning of August 13th, 2018, Shanann returned home from a business trip at 2 a.m. Her friend, Nicole, had dropped her off and expected to hear from her later that morning. But Shanann never called. She missed a doctor's appointment, didn't answer texts, and by midday, Nicole felt something was terribly wrong. When police arrived at the Watts home, Chris opened the door calmly, his face unreadable. He explained that Shanann and the girls had gone to a friend's house. But the house didn't feel right. Her purse, phone, keys, and medication were all still there. Body cam footage later showed Chris pacing nervously, talking fast, avoiding eye contact. To the officers, something felt off. As the day went on, the search intensified. Neighbors, family, and police began combing through every clue. Chris stayed on camera, giving interviews, pleading for his family's return. He said all the right things, the words of a desperate husband. If you're out there, just come back. If someone has them, please bring them home. But his body language told another story. 2 days later, detectives called him in for questioning. He smiled, joked, and insisted on his innocence. They asked him to take a polygraph test, and he agreed. When it was done, the examiner leaned forward and said gently, "Chris, you did not pass that test." The calm expression on his face faltered. Detective Tammy Lee pressed him softly but firmly. "We just need to know the truth. What really happened that morning?" Hours passed in silence and denial. Then, when his father entered the room, Chris whispered words that stunned everyone. "I messed up. It wasn't just a mistake. It was a confession waiting to unfold." He began by claiming that he and Shanann argued, that in a moment of rage, he strangled her after she said something that snapped him. He said she had hurt the girls first, and he acted in panic. But the evidence told a different story, one far darker. The following day, police discovered the bodies of Shanann, Bella, and Celeste at Chris's work site, a remote oil field miles away. Shanann had been buried in a shallow grave. The two girls were found inside the oil tanks. Even seasoned officers broke down at the scene. When confronted with the evidence, Chris finally admitted it all. He had killed his pregnant wife, smothered his daughters, and loaded their bodies into his truck before heading to work, pretending nothing had happened. The truth spread like wildfire across the country. Everyone wanted to understand why. In the days that followed, media coverage consumed every detail of the case. His porch interview was replayed millions of times, analyzed, dissected, slowed down frame by frame. Internet detectives pointed out his nervous swaying, his lack of tears, the strange half-smile he gave the camera. To the world, Chris Watts became the embodiment of evil. Not the stranger in the dark, but the smiling husband next door. Months later, behind prison walls, Chris began to write letters. Long, rambling pages filled with regret, prayers, and attempts to explain himself. He said he had been living a double life, that he was torn between his family and a new relationship that made him feel free. He described hearing a voice that told him it would be over soon. Psychologists who studied the case called him a chilling mix of narcissism and emotional detachment. He didn't explode in anger. He simply decided. In one chilling confession, he admitted that his daughters were still alive when he drove them to the oil site, that he killed them one by one after burying Shanann. Even the detectives who heard that confession said it was one of the darkest moments of their careers. The world watched in disbelief. How could a man who looked so ordinary, so loving, be capable of something so monstrous? Inside prison, Chris remains isolated. He spends his days reading, praying, and answering letters from strangers, some angry, some disturbingly sympathetic. He claims to have found God, to pray for forgiveness, but his words do little to quiet the horror of what he did. Meanwhile, Shanann's family continues to honor her memory, speaking publicly about domestic violence and the hidden signs of control, manipulation, and emotional isolation. They remind the world that behind every smiling photo, there can be silent suffering no one sees. The Watts case has since become one of the most infamous family murders in modern America. Documentaries, podcasts, and online discussions continue to analyze it, not just for the crime, but for what it reveals about human nature. How far can a person go to maintain an illusion? How deeply can deception hide beneath a smile? Chris Watts will spend the rest of his life in prison. No parole, no escape, only the echoes of what he destroyed. But the real legacy of this tragedy isn't his crime. It's the haunting reminder that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones who blend imperfectly. In memory of Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and unborn baby Nico Watts, may their story never be forgotten. Evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it smiles for the camera. Sometimes it says, "I love you," before turning out the lights. And sometimes the scariest part of a true crime story is how normal it looks until it's too late.